So here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news and have a little bit of dialogue with those of you who were able to join us for the live portion. And if you are listening anywhere else and you would like to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. And the monikers for that are at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. No felines in the room today. Sorry, folks, no felines in the room. But we have some animal stories for you. We have some animal discussions coming up. If you are listening elsewhere, for the benefit of those of you who are listening and not able to see, naturally, I do read through as many comments as is reasonable, and I'll say hello to some of the people that have chosen to chime in so far and say hello. I see Brian is here today. Helter is here today. Kimberly, Dragon, and Rodney popping in to say hi. And top of the news, in case you were wondering, no, we're not talking about monkeys today. We're not talking about the escaped monkeys. I think there are still 11 at large. And Rodney says, no kitties denied. Yeah, they're not in the room. I don't think there's any in the room anyways, but you never know. Fluke Man is here, as well as Undercover Ruski joining us today. The results are in. The results are in. I know everybody was worried, but the results are in for Peanut. You remember Peanut, don't you? The squirrel that was kidnapped and murdered by the government. Well, the results are in, and apparently there was nothing wrong with him. There it is, USA Today article. And it says the results are in. Peanut the squirrel did not have rabies, according to county officials. No shit. No shit, right? The long-awaited rabies results of Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon have been shared. Both animals tested negative, according to county officials. Chemung County Executive Christopher Moss confirmed to USA Today on Wednesday that the rabies results of both animals are negative. We all knew that. They were domesticated. They're domesticated animals, and they showed no signs of illness, let alone rabies. We knew there was nothing wrong with them. This was never about whether or not those animals had rabies. This was about the state enforcing their viewpoints, enforcing the law, intimidating people, and making examples. It says social media star Peanut the squirrel was seized from his New York home by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on October 30th, euthanized and tested for rabies on the same day. Fred the raccoon was also seized and euthanized. That's right. And you all know who Peanut was, I'm sure. Monkey has joined us, and Fluke Man says, no shit, what happened, and no kidding. Because it's frustrating to me, because I work with animals. I work with, I've got all those strays and rescue cats that I work with, and the same thing could happen to you or me. The same thing could happen to any of us. As a matter of fact, I've got a side story not related I want to talk about here really quickly. New York Patriot has joined us. Glad you could make it. But this was never about whether or not those animals had rabies or protecting the public health or protecting the animals or anything like that. It was about setting an example. You can't even have a squirrel unless we tell you you can. Dragon says harming animals is a sign of psychopathy. And the government sure loves harming animals. And Daniel is here. He says he's listening. Nature Nerd says, when I went back to work from the strike, it was the end of the pay period. The union charged the $93 fees for working a one-day paycheck, and I ended up only getting paid $43. That's the union for you. That's how it works. Rodney says government overreach is out of control in New York, all over the country. all over the country. And that's one of the things Trump says he wants to walk back, which is why one of the agencies that's going to be really picked apart, because he has brought in, apparently they're going to go for it. Ramaswamy and Musk want the jobs, and they want to pick apart the Department of Education and the FBI. Helter says the reason was pretty clear. Toe the line and we take everything you love is fairly easy to decipher. That is correct. Tuck says, please like, share, and subscribe on both channels. Thank you, Tuck. And Brian says, as well as anybody who hurts animals. I know it. One more here. New York says, I'll say at least the people who were responsible for Peanut and Fred were outed. Yes. Now, I'm going to play you something. Okay, this is not news related, but it does tie in with the whole concept of the overreach of government, especially when it comes to animals. I have a friend who lives in New Jersey. He left me a message, and I'm going to play part of this message for you. Okay, I'm going to play part of this audio message for you here really quickly, and then I'm going to explain what the hell's going on, because this is nuts. All right, are we ready? And hopefully you can hear this audio clearly. Okay, so here we go. I know he's a little bit of a potty mouth. I'm going to explain. You can't hear that? I'm going to explain it. I'm sorry about that. I was hoping you could be able to hear it. Let me catch up a couple of comments. Daniel says, heard of layoffs today at Boeing. The union just signed a contract too, of course. And that's how they're going to pay for it, is by firing everybody. Jack says, got to wonder how much the deep state will let Trump get away with. Rodney says the establishment will obstruct and sabotage Trump's agenda at every turn. McConnell already installed another rhino as a speaker. What he's talking about there in that audio clip, I'm sorry, some people couldn't hear it very well. He lives in New Jersey. He found a guinea pig. It was in a laundry basket. Somebody had a laundry basket with guinea pigs in it that they left on the side of the road. Okay. And some of them got out and were hit by cars. They're killed. But one was still in there, and he took it home, and he called the SPCA, Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Hey, found this guinea pig. I have cats. I can't keep it. You know, you guys rescue guinea pigs. What can we do here? They raided his house. This is what he's talking about. Knock at the door. He goes to open the door, and it was shoved open, and he was pushed into the house by SPCA police, because they are armed. So an armed team of SPCA officials entered his house to confiscate the guinea pig. Well, we got reports of an abused animal. And he's like, you mother effers, I'm the one that called because I found it. Nobody's abusing anything. Take the effing thing and get out of my house. And he had to get on the phone with the SPCA and sort it out to get them to remove them from his property. And again, that was New Jersey. Monkey says the Onion bought InfoWars from the bankruptcy auction. I remember NBC saying they'll put in gun control ads on the website. I heard that, and Alex Jones has refused to leave the building thus far. Fluke Man says in 100 years, Iron Fist governments will ban all pets and replace them with AI robots covered in fake fur. Oh, Anyway, sorry about the audio problem. And Rodney says WTF raided his house. Yes, because he wasn't expecting that. He was the SPCA has armed officers, apparently so, and they pushed his way in. No warrant. They don't need one. Animal in danger. And fortunately, it got sorted out, and all they did was take the stupid guinea pig, which he was turning in the first place because he can't keep it. He can't keep it because, again, he has cats in the house. It's not a good mix. But think about that. Think about the totalitarian overreach of a government agency. And yeah, again, we're talking about New Jersey, so it's already a mess. The government there is a disaster. The overreach of government that armed men can force their way into your home and confiscate a pet. We already saw this, and that's why I wanted to tie this in. But like as was pointed out, the audio there wasn't working. It wasn't working. He was too low, I guess. His voice was too low. But just another example, of course, Peanut the squirrel and the raccoon, Fred, was New York. This is New Jersey. Blue states, East Coast. Kimberly says raiding a house over a guinea pig is obsessive, don't you think? It's kind of ridiculous. But, I mean, that's the world that we're living in right now. And if they're going to go that far with an animal, how far are they going to go with anything else? How much overreach is there in every other walk of life? You just don't realize it because you haven't crossed that border. You haven't stepped over that line somewhere to understand, okay, wait, this is illegal too, or they can do this because of that. They could treat me how? Rodney says, I'm working towards moving to a small town, going as off-grid as practical. Government overreach is worst in large cities. And of course, Rodney is in New Zealand. So I totally get where you're coming from with that. As New Zealand, I mean, it's practically 1984, except there's no war going on. Fluke Man says SPCA raided the house because of the cats. They were worried the kitty's going to eat it. Oh, yeah? Is that what it is? Is that what's wrong? But yeah, they were abandoned in a laundry basket. He thought he was doing the right thing, but apparently not. He probably would have been better off to just give it away to somebody than deal with all of that nonsense. And he's probably on a record somewhere. That's insane. That's insane. The New York Patriot says none of these so-called animal police should be armed. Well, apparently they are. Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Kimberly says their daughter rescued 8 hamsters yesterday. The owner couldn't care for them because of chemo treatments. Wow. Thank goodness she went to a pet store with them. They took them and will offer them free. Okay, that's good. Oh, yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. One quick thing about Harris, as Joe Rogan is opening up more about the interviews that were coming up, or the interview that did not take place, rather, I should say. He interviewed Trump for 3 hours, completely off the cuff and unscripted, but he was unable to interview Harris because they had demands. And the demands that we heard about, and this is going to be a New York Post article, the demands that we heard about was that A, he had to come to her, and B, the most she could possibly offer was an hour at best, which meant that it probably would have ended up being like 40, 45 minutes, because I'm sure she would have been late. Rogan is coming forward now, revealing other things that were stipulations that he couldn't agree with, as is alluded to by the headline. Joe Rogan claims Harris wanted to avoid marijuana legalization talk as aides feared progressive backlash. So in addition to stipulations about where the interview would be and how long it was, she had a list of things he wasn't allowed to ask her, which, that really sort of defeats the whole purpose of conducting an interview, isn't it? Brian says people who hurt animals are weaklings and cowards because they hurt creatures that have little to no defense against them. I can agree with that. Rodney says we are close to 1984, talking about New Zealand there. The one good thing is we gave the previous Labour government the boot. Think commies wearing a socialist skin suit. The new guys are not quite as awful. Let's hope so, Rodney. Let's hope so. So Rogan says that the Harris-Walz campaign drew a red line on talking about marijuana legalization for the interview that never happened, while AIDS said the sit-down was kiboshed over fears of progressive backlash. Quote, I think they had requirements on things that she didn't want to talk about. She didn't want to talk about marijuana legalization, which I thought was hilarious, according to Joe Rogan. And, you know, if there's other things, they haven't been revealed yet, but it doesn't surprise me at all. I imagine it would have opened the door, since this was not an interview with anyone that things had already been established with. If he had brought it up about marijuana legalization, he could have thrown it in her face that under her watch in California, a lot of people did a lot of time over marijuana. Now all of a sudden she wants to flip the script on it. And how that just doesn't seem honest. It doesn't seem honest. It seems like you're just blowing the wind, sweetheart. It seems like you're just trying to pander to certain groups. And again, the type of group that wants to sit around and smoke weed all day, they're not going to go out and vote anyways. So big deal. Big deal. But I think this is interesting that, you know, more is being revealed about the interview that never happened, in that there was additional stipulations about things that they could not discuss, which Trump didn't do. Trump never, as far as I understand it, there were no stipulations, or Rogan would have said something about it by now. He's not afraid to bring that up if that's the case. But she did have stipulations because she's afraid, or was. It's all over now. Nature Nerd says marijuana legalization has made every state that legalized it worse. At least Florida voted against it. And Dragon says she was too busy hanging out with Beyonce and Oprah. And JJ says they might vote if they got a bag of munchies as compensation. Yeah, I know. You get a free bag when you vote instead of a sticker. Fluke Man says he thinks Rogan should have accepted her terms, but when it comes to actually doing it, drill her with real questions and criticism and keep recording when she goes nuts. Most Republicans love to see that. That's why they watched The View that one day. And Patriot says she prosecuted over 1,500 people for minor drug offenses and recommended sentences beyond recommended minimums. Couple more here and we'll move on. Helter says there's a lot of things she did not want to talk about because of the previous things that she did during her prosecution years, which would make her a huge hypocrite. Well, she is, but she doesn't want it to be all out in the open that she's a huge hypocrite. Most of these politicians are. It's disgusting. It's why nobody wanted to vote for these people this time around. I think some people finally got to step forward and admit, yeah, these people are ridiculous. I'm not voting for them this time. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past. So here we go. We got Trump again. And hopefully, although if he's going to walk things back, he's going to have to walk things back all the way to 1979 to make a difference. Which he might be doing if he eliminates the Department of Education, which everybody's crying about. Oh, the schools need the money because of Title I. They've been abusing Title I since the early 80s. And Title I, of course, is the extra money that the government gives to public schools to help them with dealing with say, handicapped or disabled students, which I imagine that the schools wouldn't lose if they're legitimately using that money. But they take advantage of that. They take advantage of that extra money. I've mentioned it before when I used to drive a school bus. One of the routes I had was a handicap route, disabled route. And there were kids that I was bringing to that school had no business being in a school. I'm sorry. They didn't. They needed to be in a much more secure facility. And there are facilities for that. Why are they going to public school? Because public school said they could handle it, and they can't. They can't. So a couple of the students I used to deliver were very violent. They shouldn't be around regular students. And to my understanding, they just lock them in a room all day anyways and don't do anything with them. This was Kansas, by the way, but still, I mean, you get my point. And Jane is here. Glad you could make it. Says that they're late. That's okay. Patriot said she laughed about smoking weed on the Breakfast Club. I did not see the Breakfast Club. I didn't see it. I did not see that interview. I don't think I did. But while we're talking about corruption in government and hypocrites, we're going to bring this up again really quickly. And this is, where did this come from? Baltimore Sun. This is the Baltimore Sun. Fired FEMA worker says that agency avoided pro-Trump homes in the Carolinas. And this is what's been coming out with this. Are they going to show me the rest of this? I have to open up the continue. It says a woman who was fired by the Federal Emergency Management Agency after instructing workers to avoid the homes of President-elect Donald Trump's Florida supporters revealed Monday the agency also, it's trying to make me, hold on folks. The article is trying to force me to sign into their website in order to read the rest of the article. So we're just going to close that. But I'm sure you've heard this by now. She was scapegoated by FEMA. They threw her under the bus, and now she's doing interviews openly and saying that she was a patsy and that was the procedure, period. Don't listen to anything FEMA says. There was no incident of, oh, well, people with Trump signs threatened FEMA workers, so we have to be careful, and that's all a load of crap. That FEMA made that up. That was the standing order coming from her superiors to put anyone with Trump signage on the back burner. Consider them last as political opponents, which should not be happening. And because of this, which is where I was trying to go with it, but again, they tried to force me to sign into the website, is that now evidence has been exposed because of what she said, to the extent that Florida is suing FEMA over what's been revealed, and the Carolinas are considering suing FEMA, which, if they have evidence enough to open up lawsuits against the federal government, then she's telling the truth. She's telling the truth. Nature Nerd says, funny how Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party got less votes than Jill Stein of the Green Party. Flukeman says, what three-letter agencies would you like Trump to disband and why? All of them. I don't trust any of them, because you can find shady business in all of them. They all need to be dismantled and reworked from the bottom up. Tuck says, I always thought the ESOL students should not be on regular campuses. Should not be on regular campuses. If they're severe, they have places for that. They don't need to be in the school. Yeah, I mean, and that's what gets me also when I see commercials. And there was one, I think it was an Amazon commercial, because they love showcasing deaf people on Amazon commercials. I don't know if you ever noticed this. Real deaf people do not go to public school. They have a separate school that they go to, just like the blind. Real blind people do not go to public school. There is a separate facility for them that they go to specifically. I didn't have it as a regular route, but I drove the blind bus a couple of times to cover for somebody. Everyone on the bus was blind, and they went to one facility. It's not, which wasn't much. I mean, it's Topeka, Kansas. There was like 8 kids. But you get my point. And they had a school specifically for the deaf students where all the faculty spoke in sign language. So, yeah, they love telling you that. But they do that, oh, everything is all inclusive, but it really isn't, number one. And number two, they love to shoehorn in certain situations like the handicap bus that I talked about. Again, I had a couple of kids that were really violent. One was really bad. I think I talked about it in the school bus video. When I had to strap in his chair, all he'd do is punch me in the back and scream. That's all he did all day was swing away and scream. And I was like, you can't have this kid sitting next to anyone else in the public school. That's crazy. He's super violent. There's something really wrong. It's not just a physical handicap. But yeah, FBI, because they've been weaponized, answering Fluke Man's comment. The Department of Education definitely needs to be dismantled and rebuilt. The IRS, there's no oversight at the IRS. I have a lot of personal experience with that. The EPA, they torment farmers. Well, the small farmers. They don't bother with the ones that are in the industrial farms. Nature Nerd says FEMA has failed. Unrested said they didn't even bother visiting his destroyed house and neighborhood until 3 weeks later after the storm. Patriot says there's an entire school for the deaf in my old neighborhood in the Bronx. Yeah. Because it's like a whole different culture altogether. And they usually congregate together and they don't mix with hearing people often. They really don't. Like I said, it's a whole separate culture, literally within a culture. You have to see it to understand it. Jane says, you're right. My son taught deaf school in LA State. Rodney says, weird. I cannot send a super chat. YouTube keeps telling me to edit it despite it being short and having no harsh language. Rewrites don't help. Really? That's bizarre. Jane says, I think 47 needs to get rid of the government for wild animal research, IRS, D-band, EPA. Yeah, and no more animal research of any kind. We're well beyond, in this day and age, needing to test animals or research animals. It doesn't need to be done anymore. There's nothing else to learn, and there's no more experience or experiments that need to be done. Just knock it off. Tuck says public schools allow half a dozen disruptive kids interfere with the education of hundreds of other kids. True. And then and they have facilities for that. In Topeka, it was Cap City. It was a junior/high school, so junior high and high school together, and it was called Capital City was the name of the school. And that was where you put all the massive behavior problem or court-ordered kids. Court-ordered to go to school because they're in there because they're violent or dangerous or extremely disruptive. And they were all sent there. And that doesn't mean that there weren't super disruptive kids in public schools that needed to also be in a place like that. And the kids that are in there were monstrous. They were horrible. And the principal of that school said that that the high school itself has a better than 99% failure rate. Off the record, he admitted that. He was like, these kids that get out of here, they're never going to amount to anything. None of them do. None of them do. Jane says they spent $2 million last year taking more wolves to Montana. And David says there's a school for the deaf in West Tennessee. And Rodney made a donation to the channel today. Much appreciated, Rodney. Every bit counts. Every bit counts. One more thing about the deaf schools, too, that I had noticed, because I did take deaf studies when I was in college. It was a waste of time, quite frankly, because I can't remember the sign language to save my life. There's no way I could carry on a sign language conversation. But a couple of takeaways from it. One, that they have a grammatically correct form of ASL or American Sign Language that the public schools are required to force on the students that is different from true ASL, which is the sign language that the people who are deaf in the Western world use. So if you were to say good morning, right, good from your mouth, and then morning like a sunrise, right? You say good morning, right? No, good morning. But in the public school, they would go good morning like that because ing on the end. Good morning. But in the real world, nobody does this. Nobody's grammatically correct with it. It's like when you read, the way things are written and the way you speak aren't the same. But they try to force this grammatically correct version of ASL on the students, and they hate it. And I think they still do it. I think they still do it, and it's so stupid because reading is actually, even no matter if you read and speak English, the reading is really a different language than the spoken word. Even though you basically translate it, but in your brain it's different. Just like math is a language, which is why a lot of people don't get it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And John made it. John made it, as well as WCM. He says Alex Jones sold to the Onion. I thought they bought it in a bankruptcy auction. Jane says, "How do you remember so much stuff?" I have no idea. I don't know. I have no idea. Fluke Man says it's like colored culture, blacks with blacks, Hispanics with Hispanics, etc. If you put one deaf person in a blind school, they're more likely to socialize with them. They don't like us. That's the other takeaway from the deaf studies. They do not like hearing people, and part of the reason is because we can hear. They don't like the idea that we can sense something that they can't. And that's just the unfortunate reality of it. So they stick together because they want to. They want to. Jane says, do you think it will help to start psychological hospitals again to separate businesses instead on a regular hospital? They should be separate. Those places were shut down mostly to avoid liability. So the state's not responsible, but a lot of places still they still franchise it out to independent contractors. So most of the places that have halfway houses, that have mental health facilities, you're going to find that they're private organizations getting paid by the state instead of the state doing it themselves. So in case anything goes wrong, the state can say, look, it's their fault. And then they give them a big fine, and then it's business as usual. But as a result of taking that away from the states systematically, really since the late 80s, all those mentally ill people ended up in the street and in public schools and everywhere else. And it was really a bad mistake. It was a really bad mistake in the long run. As we move around here, a couple more comments and we'll open up the next article. Nature Nerd says Elon Musk said we have made more than one government agency a year since the founding of our country, and he wants to eliminate them to 100 agencies. It's too much. I agree. I don't know how many we need or don't need, but I know it's too much. There's too much overreach. They're in too many people's business, and they make life hell, and it costs us a fortune. New York says it was sold at an auction, but he already had the Alex Jones network up and running. And Fluke Man says it's like we had to learn foreign languages but never used it. What a waste of time of taxpayers' money. Flute Man says it's like I read that. It skipped. There we go. Jane says that's what my son who teaches deaf teens. They think hearing folks a bit different and not as sensitive. Yeah, they don't like the idea because, we react to things and they don't know what it is and they don't understand that. And it annoys them. So they prefer to just avoid us. They prefer to avoid hearing people and they just kind of stick together. So, being one big happy family, like they tell you on the Amazon commercials, it's not realistic. The favorite one I love to hate from Amazon is the deaf guy who says that he's happy to go into Amazon because he needed insurance and they gave him insurance the first day. And I'm like, dude, you're deaf, you get SSI. If you're legally deaf, you got free insurance, man. What do you need insurance from Amazon for? Are you even really deaf, or are you just some actor that Amazon schlepped up for the commercial? Odds are they don't even work for Amazon. Anyways, back to the Biden administration real quick. Fox News article. Biden imposes a new methane emissions tax as he prepares to leave the White House. Let's make everything as complicated as we can for the people that are coming in next by adding a bunch of taxes and bullshit at the last second. Oh, and by the way, one thing I've noticed in the last week, gas prices in my area are down almost 40 cents. They've walked back the taxes on them again, which basically means that they didn't need to be there in the first place as far as I'm concerned. But into the article, President Joe Biden's Environmental Protection Agency finalized a new rule Tuesday taxing methane emissions from the oil and gas sector. It's going to drive prices up. The new tax was born out of the Biden's sweeping climate legislation passed by Congress, known as the Inflation Reduction Act, which is an oxymoron because it's done the exact opposite of what it claims to be, which included a waste emissions charge provision. Although the waste emissions charge was mandated by Congress, the Biden administration has discretion on how tightly to clamp down. The fee will start at $900 per metric ton of methane emitted over a specific performance level during 2024. In subsequent years, the fee will increase. In 2025, it'll be $1,200 per metric ton. In 2026, it'll be $1,500, and on and on and on. You know what? It wouldn't be a problem if they'd let them burn it off like they used to. Do you remember that? You used to see that at like dumps and other places where they'd have like a little plume of flame coming out of a pipe. That was them burning off the methane so that they weren't emitting the gas. They stopped them from being able to do that in a lot of places. Now you want to charge them for the gas that they are releasing, and it's your fault. Prior to Tuesday's new methane emissions rule, Biden and his administration imposed other rules aimed at clamping down on methane. Shortly after taking office in 2021, he signed a law repealing Trump-era actions that rescinded stricter methane emission standards imposed under then President Barack Obama. Yeah, he's just trying to make a mess. It's kind of like an employee who lost his job and he screws up his work area or messes up paperwork or changes a password or something before he leaves. That's why when someone gets fired, they try to get their key card and everything really quick, because people are dirty like that and then leave a mess behind for other people to clean up. That's all he's doing. It says, while climate change advocacies such as the Clean Air Task Force have praised Biden's rule regarding methane emissions, Steve Malloy, a fellow at the Energy of Environmental Legal Institute, described the action as irrelevant. Malloy said that because upwards of 95% or more of the greenhouse gases trapped by the Earth's atmosphere are water vapor and carbon dioxide, little to no room remains for methane to be stored. Another thing they could do is capture that methane to use as different types of fuel. JJ says methane emissions tax. I hope they won't be taxed on flatulence. And Donna says gas is up here on Fannin County, Georgia. Is it? Really? Well, I know, who is it? Rockdale and the other neighboring county, I can't think. They're down like 35, 40 cents. In the past week, it's trickled down. So methane tax gas, or methane gas tax, I said that backwards, courtesy of the Biden administration, that will increase every year. It looks like it's going to go up $300 a year per ton, per metric ton, as a fee. And all that'll do is drive prices up, because the company will pass that fee on to you for something that could be managed anyways. Like I said, they could just go back to burning it off, or they could bottle it, use it as a natural gas source. No, we got to make things complicated, and we got to build more solar farms with taxpayer money, and more wind farms with taxpayer money. Even though literally for solar power to provide enough juice for the grid as it stands, I think 1/3 of the US would have to be covered with solar panels. I read that somewhere. It's insane. Nature Nerd says methane is a good power source. A few dumps have put methane pipes to power thousands of homes, and it's really cheap compared to other sources of electricity. Yeah, if you're going to burn it off, you may as well use it for a power source. Fluke Man says, confused how the U.S. medical system works. Are Americans automatically covered, but you need to buy health medical insurance? One guy robbed a bank for $1 and patiently waited for the cops because he couldn't afford it, I guess. If you're below a certain income level, yeah, you don't pay anything. The hospital either writes it off, or if your income's low enough, you qualify for insurance anyways, for free insurance or really low cost insurance, usually through the government. If you're disabled in any way, you get the free insurance because you can qualify for SSI through the Social Security office, and they'll give you medical insurance, so you're covered for whatever. Usually it's middle class and above that have to buy their insurance, and they're the ones that are getting stuck. But again, if they made open doors free healthcare, anybody in any Western country where they have socialized medicine will tell you how bad it is. Will tell you how bad that type of a system is. So no, I'm not automatically covered. Of course, if you were a veteran, you get free coverage as long as you weren't dishonorably discharged. So it depends. Kimberly thought that the flatulence from cows was the problem. Are they taxing cows? Don't run that by the current administration. As far as I know, they're not taxing cows, not in the U.S. Not in the U.S. But hold on a second. I heard a chime. But as far as I know, they are not. They're not taxing it like that. They are attempting that in Europe, though. They are attempting that in Europe. More people or more agencies walking things back with the change in administration. Something to think about. The change in administration. We've already been seeing it all week. Again, New York saying that they're going to get rid of the free debit card for illegal immigrants. Now that the Democrats have lost. And we're seeing it here as well. Another sanctuary city, and this is Massachusetts, I believe, Daily Caller article. Sanctuary state has been told to cut the spending on hotel stays for migrants as the cost is hitting $1 billion. A state commission is encouraging Massachusetts to cut costs on emergency shelter services for migrants and other families by spending less on expensive hotels. The emergency shelter system in Massachusetts that is housing migrant families and others experiencing homelessness is expected to spend over $1 billion in 2025. The report comes as Massachusetts, a sanctuary state that limits cooperation with federal immigration authorities, is continuing to experience financial hardship over the border crisis and an influx of migrants into their communities. $1 billion on hotel rooms. The draft report proposed spending less on the most expensive accommodations for migrants, which would include hotels and motels. Prior reports have found that housing migrants in hotels or motels in the state is costing as much as $300 per night. That's because there were no bid contracts and the hotels and motels are gouging the state. And that's tax money. That's over $1 billion a year in Massachusetts taxpayer funds just on hotel rooms for people that shouldn't even be in the country. It says since the EA shelter system reached capacity at 7,500 families last year, approximately 50% of families have been in hotels and motels across the state. The commission recommends limiting reliance on hotels and motels to best serve families and increase the financial and operational efficiency of the system, while recognizing that hotels and motels may be a last resort option for surge capacity at times of rapid change in demand. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey speaks on stage during the final days of the Democratic National Convention at the United Center on August 22nd. Oh, that they're going back to something else here that I don't need to read. $1 billion, over $1 billion next year, just on the hotel rooms. Never mind food, never mind medical, never mind public education, because they're going to force these kids to go to school. Never mind whatever else you can think of, because there's plenty more. There's plenty more. $1 billion just on hotel and motel rooms. And Massachusetts lawmakers want to walk that back now. Suddenly it's a problem. It wouldn't have been a problem if Harris had won. They wouldn't have said nothing. They would have just kept begging for more tax money. And Hochul is going to fight this. Watch. Nature Nerd says Denver hooked up methane power plants to the sewers, and farms have used manor methane power plants to save over $1 million a year in electricity and power homes all around. Kimberly had a botched surgery last January. Through my job, I had short and long-term disability. When it switched to long-term, the company told me to apply for disability. And it's been a nightmare. That's unfortunate. And that's Life has joined us. Glad you could make it today. Reading a little bit about Massachusetts now. Suddenly, they don't know if it's a good idea to keep spending $1 billion a year just on hotels for illegal migrants. Unhoused migrants. Undocumented, unhoused migrants. Undocumented citizens. I think that's the term, right? They're trying to call them undocumented citizens. And unhoused instead of homeless. And Tuck says, don't forget, many charities are giving illegals free stuff. They're not giving, it's costing something, because those charities are getting that stuff from somewhere and they're getting compensated somehow. Flukeman says, talking about illegals, why does the U.S. law allow babies born in the country automatically American citizens, even though their parents are foreigners? Honestly, that needs to be looked at. Yeah, I don't get that either. I mean, I can understand where if you are a citizen, and this came up a lot, especially after Vietnam, the dust children, I think they used to call them, right? Dust children from Vietnam, and they were children that were left behind, fathered by American infantrymen, American soldiers who were in Vietnam during the war. and they would petition to come to the United States, which, if it could be verified that they were fathered by an American GI, then the government would allow for them to come to the United States because they would be considered a citizen because their father was an American citizen. But as far as the anchor babies thing, I don't necessarily agree with that process at all, and I don't know why we do that. Yeah, there you go. Kimberly says anchor babies. Yes, I don't like that system. And they were called dust children, by the way. That's a term that the Vietnamese used. I don't know what the Vietnamese word for it is, but they called it dust children because if you were of mixed race in Vietnam, you were considered to be lower than dust. And that's how people are. Tuck says many of the charities are funneling taxpayer money into the form of grants. Exactly. Nature Nerd says illegal immigration did better in the past because there were less rules and regulations on businesses. But in the big cities with so many rules, they are homeless and jobless. And I've got another corrupt lawmaker for you. You'll get a kick out of this one coming up in the next article. And who has this article? I think it's a Fox News article. Fox News article. Democrat politician repeatedly insults officer's manhood during a DUI arrest. I got a kick out of this one. Democrats can't win for losing. That's what they used to say back in the day. You can't win for losing. A Democratic elected official arrested in Chicago after allegedly causing a 3-car pileup and making inappropriate comments about the arresting officer's penis. The Chicago Sun-Times first reported the incident. According to the outlet, the elected official, Samantha Steele, 45 years old, was arrested at 8:50 p.m. on Sunday after crashing into another vehicle and causing a 3-car pileup in North Chicago. During the arrest, Steele repeatedly asked the arresting officer if his penis was that small. Steele serves as the commissioner for the 2nd District of the Cook County Board of Review, which oversees property tax assessment in and around the city of Chicago. The Chicago Sun-Times reported the Chicago police arriving on the scene observed extensive damage to the involved vehicles and found Steele lying on the sidewalk. In the report, it says that they observed her eyes bloodshot and glassy and detected strong odors of alcohol coming from her breath. The police report said the officers immediately detected strong alcohol scent and noticed an open bottle of red wine on the passenger side floor of Steele's car. After the officers asked Steele, I love it. After officers asked Steele how much she had to drink, she replied, I want my lawyer and I'm not talking to you. She also refused to perform a field sobriety test and ended up being arrested and handcuffed. And here's a picture of Steele with her Gucci belt. Flukeman says that's how Bruce Lee became a citizen, which was good, but that's extremely rare that far and few between those people actually helped to make America great. And Nature Nerd says she was on drugs with red eyes. Apparently she was drunk. That's what they're saying. It looks like she had Botox, too, looking at her eyebrows. That's neither here nor there. I just don't agree with the use of Botox. I think it's a bad idea. It says, rather than calling her attorney, the Chicago Sun-Times reported Steele called a member of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, Scott Britton, who has since referred her to a criminal attorney. Steele is being charged with misdemeanor driving under the influence. Misdemeanor driving under the influence There's 3 total vehicles. I guess she called the right person. Steele was elected as Cook County's Border Review Commissioner in 2022, serving a 4-year term until 2026. And Steele, of course, did not respond to requests for comments, naturally, which she shouldn't. Any attorney would tell her not to talk. Any attorney would tell her not to talk. So Sunday evening, 8:30, Steele is drunk, got a bottle of red wine in her car, crashes into other vehicles. And when the arresting officer picks her up off the sidewalk where she's taken a nap, she starts making fun of his twigs and berries. And somehow she's up for a misdemeanor DUI after wrecking 3 vehicles. Nature Nerd says pot makes eyes red. And Flukeman says, doesn't Botox kill cells? I believe so. Well, it kills the nerves that move the muscles in the face. And I don't, it's just a bad idea. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous too. When they talk about Botox in commercials, because they tell you, oh, it's for headaches. All you have to do, no one can prove if you have a headache or not. You go to the doctor's office if you want Botox. Yeah, man, I get migraines every day. I get a migraine 2-3 times a week. And they don't know. And so they give you the Botox to stop your headaches. And I don't know how stopping the muscles in your face from moving is going to prevent you from getting a headache. That's usually something to do with your nasal cavity or your eyes or your inner ear, which is a whole different problem altogether. But listen to the commercials, and it talks about paralysis, obstruction of breathing, death. You can get killed from a Botox injection. Jane says, drunk Karen, daughter's boyfriend is a cop in Florida. He said there are so many crazy people around. Cops have to deal with all kinds of folks. Brian says drunk drivers are selfish as it gets. And Nature Nerd says if she called an Uber, she would have said the same things. But yeah, she called somebody else from the Board of Commissions, and they came and got her. Or no, they didn't come and get her. Excuse me. They advised her to call an actual attorney. But if she got a misdemeanor out of that, I guess she called the right person. Must be nice to be a lawmaker in Chicago. Kimberly says they use it for migraines. Yeah, that's the claim. Because like I said, you can't prove whether or not you get headaches. I get headaches every day. Prove I don't. Seriously. So you go to the doctor. Yeah, man, my head, man. I take aspirin for it, or I take Tylenol, whatever. It doesn't work. Oh, well, let's give you Botox. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But really, you just want a flat forehead. Oh, my God. Really, you just want a flat forehead. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I think that's hilarious. I think that's hilarious. Getting away with murder. I wonder if she'll get reelected now. A 4-year term. 4-year term. And she's in charge of assessing taxes for the district. Taxes for the district. I wonder how much that pays. I always wonder about these people's jobs. Yeah, Jane says, yeah, headaches, can't prove it or not. Yeah, you don't know. I could tell you I have migraines every day and you wouldn't know. A doctor can't prove it unless they can, if they scan my head, they do an x-ray or an ultrasound and they can see something going on in there. But if they can't see anything, they can't prove I don't have pain. Flukeman says better to go for scans, could be something life-threatening. Unless you're pretending to get migraines so that you can get a flat forehead. And then you walk around like this all day. And then when you talk, just your lower lip moves because the rest of your face is frozen solid because of the Botox. And I've seen people like that. Men now too, because dudes are doing it. And then their cheeks and their forehead look like this. And then again, their lower lip moves when they talk, and that's the only part of their face that moves, and there's no expression. It's like a ventriloquist dummy. It's like a ventriloquist dummy. It's scary. But with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you were listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Special thanks to Rodney, who made a donation to the channel today. Very much appreciated, as always. Thank you, everyone else who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will